everyone. Welcome to my microbial diseases presentation. Today I will be talking about rabies, Eastern equine encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis, and Venezuelan equine encephalitis, also known as EEE, WEE, and VEE. Probably heard about them before, but we're going to discuss them today. These are all classified as diseases of the nervous system, which is also found in chapter 24 of our book. Before we get started into the material, here's a quick table of contents about what we will be discussing today. Just a quick thing, what is rabies, EEE, WEE, and VEE? What causes these diseases? How do they manifest in the body? What are some signs and symptoms? How is it diagnosed? What is the epidemiology? Treatments and prevention methods? And last but not least, references, along with some fun modern-day comedical references. Keep a lookout for those. All of my Office fans, I'm sure you know what I'm going to discuss throughout this presentation because how could you not when you're talking about rabies? We'll get into that in a little bit. So what exactly is rabies? We hear a lot about it. It's why we stay away from wild animals that look possessed and foam at the mouth. So here is what it actually is. It is described as a fatal zoonotic viral disease that is transmissible from animals to humans. So it is a virus, and humans are incidental hosts, where we are the secondary person to get infected after the animal. It targets the central nervous system. It causes brain swelling and cerebral dysfunction, ultimately resulting in death. The fatality rate is just about 100%. However, it can be prevented with vaccination and severe medical intervention if caught in time post-exposure. If you do nothing or you don't realize that you've been infected, your prognosis is kind of grim. Some major vectors in the United States that you need to watch out for are wild foxes, bats, skunks, raccoons, along with a few others, but these are the major ones. It is transmitted through the saliva of an infected animal. So if the animal bites you, the saliva goes into your bloodstream, it travels through your nervous system, and ultimately infects your entire body. Dogs are still a very large carrier around the world of this virus. So a lot of dogs get infected from other sources. They bite humans. This is really the main reason around the world why people are infected with rabies from dog bites. How could I not mention Michael Scott's fun run race for the cure? This was in support of Meredith when she was hit by Michael's car, but ultimately she was, supposedly bitten by a rabid bat, and she could have been exposed to rabies that way when Dwight put a plastic bag over her head. All my Office fans out there know exactly what I'm talking about. However, we could not do this presentation without in support of Michael Scott and his Dunder Mifflin's Scranton Meredith Palmer Memorial Celebrity Rabies Awareness Pro-Am Fun Run Race for the Cure. Tongue twister, not sponsored. Okay, back to serious business. What are the signs and symptoms that somebody should look out for, whether you or someone you know, or even just a random stranger jogging by, happens to be bitten by a wild rabid animal? Some initial signs and symptoms kind of resemble the flu. They include general weakness, fever, malaise feeling, headache, tiredness, and they can kind of last for days. This is definitely something you really should look out for because it is definitely mistaken for just being kind of under the weather. This resembles a lot of other illnesses that humans get infected, so you might not really think, oh, rabies. This should be the forefront of your mind if you realize that you've been bitten by another animal, whether you knew it was rabid or not. Just be aware, because initial symptoms quickly turn to secondary symptoms, which include cerebral dysfunction, anxiety, confusion, mood changes, personality changes, hallucinations, and ultimately the hydrophobia, which is the fear of water. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The initial incubation period really does depend on several different factors, which we'll get into. After exposure, the disease travels through the central nervous system and ultimately infects the brain. It can take weeks to months before symptoms begin to show. However, that might not be the case for everybody, depending on several factors listed below. Location of the bite, meaning how far away is it from the brain, that all depends on how the virus will travel through the system. type of rabies type of rabies virus that you get infected with, since there are several different types, which we'll also discuss. Some are more severe than others, and some will determine the fatality rate that you may or may not suffer if you are bitten by a rabid animal. Also, lastly, potential existing immunity of the host. If you have immunity, whether you've been bitten before, been vaccinated, or just have some weird immunity that none of us are aware of, that will determine how the virus manifests in your body. As I mentioned before, hydrophobia is a symptom that develops later on in the virus manifestation. You are afraid of water. Animals are afraid of water. Michael Scott decided that he was going to support the fear of water in his fun run race for the cure by not drinking water during his 5K race. I do not recommend this. Definitely do not run a 5K race without drinking water, as this will have other effects on your body. He found out the hard way. However, secondary symptoms do last 2 to 10 days once they show it is fatal after this period, so your time is grim once these develop. There is supportive treatment. However, once you reach the secondary stage, there is no cure. How does rabies manifest in the body? This is where we're going to get into the mechanism of action, the causative agents, stuff like that. So this is a very important part of the presentation. The causative agent stems from the neurotropic viruses in the family of the Rhabdoviridae family, specifically in the genus of Lysovirus. Pronunciation may not be correct, I'm sorry. So the rabies virus is the most common and fatal form to all humans. It is a negative stranded RNA virus from the Rhabdovirus family. This is the one that's going to be fatal. There are several other lesser forms of this virus, but this is the one that we're really going to be discussing. Getting into the mechanism of action, there is street rabies virus versus tissue-cultured adaptive rabies virus. The street virus has a strong neuroinvasive ability to cause destruction and damage to the central nervous system. This is what is going to ultimately kill somebody or an animal. The tissue-cultured adaptive rabies virus cannot penetrate the central nervous system due to immunoresistant ability. So this one is going to be the lesser form of this virus. It does not travel and penetrate the nervous system the same way the street rabies virus does. The transmission is percutaneous or mucous membrane exposure. So once you are bitten or scratched and your body has contact with the saliva of an infected animal or vector, that saliva and infection is going to travel through the break in the skin, enter your bloodstream, enter your nervous system, and ultimately travel through your peripheral nerves and infect your brain. So this is really the basic broken down pathway that it's going to take throughout the body. And that is ultimately what is going to manifest and how it is going to be fatal. How is it diagnosed? As we see here, we have some slides that are going to show positive versus negative testing. It is tested via direct fluorescent antibody test. It identifies rabies virus proteins, which is the antigen, and whether it's present on your nervous system tissue. So brain tissue is really ideal for testing since it swells the brain, and this is the control center for the rest of your nervous system and the entire body. So if you are able to test nerve or brain tissue, you will see either positive or negative, and as we can look here on the right side of my screen, positive direct fluorescent antibody testing, it will show up as fluorescent colored for the positive proteins, and negative will show nothing. It looks like a dark midnight sky. Rabies virus replicates in the cytoplasm of the cell. So therefore the infected cells will stain a fluorescent color, and that will show you how many cells and how many proteins are infected, whether you're positive or not. How is it treated? It is definitely not by carbo loading. There is a rabies vaccine that is dosed to people and animals who are infected. So the It is given on the day of exposure and subsequently on days 3, 7, and 14 to round out the series. It prevents the virus from replicating and prevents infection from progressing, so it is antiviral vaccination that just stops it kind of dead in its tracks if caught in time. Is very effective. Prevention altogether, vaccinate your pet, leave wildlife alone, and wash all animal bites immediately after exposure to kind of, if it hasn't infected you, you don't really know, but washing it really and, rinsing it with alcohol and cleaning solutions really are important to kill off any remaining virus that might be on your skin prior to entry of the break in the skin. Very important. So now let's get into the rest of the presentation talking about equine encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis, and Venezuelan equine encephalitis. That should be a V. I apologize for my typo. So what are these diseases specifically? These are all variations of the same virus family. The Eastern, Venezuelan, and Western names all come from where they manifest in the world. They all do have similar symptoms, manifestations within the body, and they're all transmitted the same way. So all of these viruses they cause brain infections. Eastern equine encephalitis occurs in eastern and Gulf Coast states of the United States. Western occurs in West Coast states, Minnesota, Mexico, and mainly South America. And Venezuelan occurs mainly in South America, Venezuela, obviously Mexico, and parts of the United States, however, less so than the other two forms. The causative agent is a virus that comes from the genus alphavirus, which is the Togaviridae family. How do they manifest in the body? They are transmitted through mosquito bites. Very specific mosquitoes. They feast on infected avian species, so infected birds. Mosquitoes bite them, they pick up the virus. The mosquito then transmits the virus through feasting on another uninfected host. Transmission of the blood. The virus goes into the blood of either a human or also a horse in this case. This is equine encephalitis. And the blood goes directly throughout the whole body and affects the host. Horses are also mainly susceptible to this particular virus. Mosquitoes bite the horse. Horses have a 100% fatality rate once infected. You really need to vaccinate your horses for this prior to contraction of this virus. So that is really important because if it gets infected, it's dead. We don't want that, so just vaccinate. Transmission is extremely specific. There's only one type of mosquito, as seen below, that mainly feasts on the infected birds. Then that virus has to live in the mosquito and transmit to another human or another host, such as a horse. So the mosquito must be capable of creating a bridge between the infected birds and the humans or other animals. Therefore, not all mosquitoes are capable of doing this, but then again, when you're bitten by a mosquito, you don't really know what species it is, so it's just best to leave all mosquitoes alone and make sure that they leave you alone. Some general signs and symptoms of equine encephalitis include it's a really systemic illness, so fever, chills, tired feeling, arthralgia, and myalgia. So a lot of body pain, a lot of fever, so kind of the flu-like symptoms again that we're going to see here, which then eventually turn into neurological symptoms. They affect the whole body and the brain and the nervous system with fever, headache, vomiting, seizures, behavioral changes, drowsiness, and ultimately coma and potentially death. The incubation period is also a lot shorter than rabies. We see here it is 4 to 10 days after infection. Instead of weeks to months that you could be seeing rabies show up, this is about 1 to 2 weeks. It results in systemic illness as well as neurological disease. Systemic illness, an example being meningitis, neurological disease, encephalitis, and brain damage. The severity, again, determines on the age of the person, immune strength, immunity already in the body, other host factors. So really, if you're young, old, have a good immune system versus not, versus compromised, that will determine how severe this is for you if you do contract this virus. How is this diagnosed? Neuroimaging of the brain is a big one. If you detect brain lesions consistent with encephalitis, that is a pretty positive diagnosis. It causes damage to the midbrain cortex and brainstem, which is a very big deal. Serologic testing is testing of the cerebrospinal fluid and brain tissue. So they take specimens from the infected host and they analyze this to see if it's positive for the IgM antibodies that are specific against EEE. The prognosis, most people do recover in 1 to 2 weeks with no neurological symptoms developing. That's super awesome. That is if you detect it early, you have the initial stage symptoms similar to influenza, you get treatment, intervention, prognosis is wonderful. Approximately 30% of the infected people die of this virus. That is, those who don't realize that they're infected with this particular thing, they let it go. Neurological issues develop, which ultimately leads to a more grim prognosis. Death can occur 2 to 10 days after the neurological symptoms appear, again, similar to rabies virus. Once those appear, it has gone systemic, it has attacked your nervous system, and you have 2 to 10 days to kind of live. For those who recover and do develop neurological symptoms, they're left with, mild to severe cognitive function. There might be some little brain damage there. Personality disorders, they might have a different personality. They might be, more irritable, more agitated than they were before. Seizures are common. Paralysis is common. And nerve dysfunction in the brain is very, very common since it's a virus that attacks the central nervous system and ultimately the brain. So there could be a host of results that end up in a person due to this virus, and you don't really know because every person manifests differently. Treatment and prevention. What do you do if you get it, and how do you avoid getting it to begin with? There's no approved vaccine or antiviral treatment available for EEE and the like. It is really only just supportive treatment, so over-the-counter medication to help lower the fever, reduce the pain, help with fatigue, stuff like that, really kind of just to make your symptoms more manageable while you go through the virus. How do you prevent it? Don't get a mosquito bite. Use bug spray. DEET is huge. I know that there are some debates on, natural bug spray versus poisonous bug spray and how it affects the body. Definitely look into that. However, DEET is the number one found in bug spray that will prevent this most. Also, eucalyptus oil, eucalyptus plant, anything that you can get that has this on there. This is a big mosquito repellent. Lemon, citronella. So all summers, those all natural bug sprays, citronella candles, light them up, put them in the tiki torch, keep those bugs away. Wearing long shirts and pants, also huge because the mosquito will not be able to get to you as easily as if you just have your exposed skin out there. So when you can, when it's not 100 degrees, wear long shirts and pants during prime mosquito hours, especially in the nighttime. Avoid swampy areas. That is where they breed. So the most likely area you are going to get this virus potentially is where the mosquitoes breed. Treat standing water. This is best for mosquito breeding. So just treat it, kill it. That is your best bet to get rid of the potential for that specific breed and species of mosquito. What is the epidemiology of these viruses? There have been a few different outbreaks, not huge, but there definitely have been some outbreaks. For Venezuelan equine encephalitis, 21 total outbreaks in South America and North America combined. Approximately only 50 human deaths occurred. Still terrible, but definitely not a grandiose number as with other virus outbreaks. So 50 human deaths occurred total. EEE, there was an outbreak in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire in 2004. Several human cases were confirmed. However, less than 20 deaths resulted from this particular outbreak in 2004. Therefore, it seemed to be managed pretty well, and those humans who did fall victim to death in this situation may have had immunocompromise, or they did not know they were infected and it was too late to catch it at the time of death. Western equine encephalitis had no major outbreaks every season. This is the one that we are watching out for every summer season. A few cases are reported. No major deaths occur to this date that I could find researching. This is really the prime one that people spray for. So, the big aerial overhead sprays in certain areas of swamplands and areas where mosquitoes are prevalent. This is what they're going to be spraying for to kill off those mosquitoes that carry Western equine encephalitis. Thank you guys so much for watching. We did make it to the end of my presentation. I hope that you guys don't feel like Michael Scott is looking in this photo. We are at the end of this spring semester, and good luck to everybody who is going on in the summer into this nursing program, and for anybody else who happens to come across this video on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this helps. These are my references in case anybody would like to check out more information about these viruses. Please stay away from rabid wild animals. Please use bug spray this summer when going outside, and wear a sweatshirt during peak mosquito hours. And cut.